Do you like comic books? Do you like the idea of a comic where a naked, burly man punches bears in the face? Me too. Listen here, Shirtless Bear-Fighter. Hit it. Hello everyone and welcome to the Bearded Geeks, the weekly grab bag of topics covering movies, comics, video games and TV. My name is Jages. I am the shirtless beard master who may punch bears in the face. And I'm rocking it on my own here in the Beard Cave today. We got a lot to talk about, we got a bit to get through, but I want to go back in time to last week's episode, our romance episode. Now, we covered a lot in that show, but, you know, there were a few things that I did actually miss out. I mean, I just want to bring them up here because there was a couple in there that I'd specifically wrote down. Like, as soon as I thought of the romance episode and a couple, like, I wrote this couple down first thing, and I'm like, yes, this is the entire... You know, this is the foundation for everything else I'm going to talk about on the show is built on. And I didn't even fucking talk about it. I skipped straight over the top of it. So, I want to give a massive, massive romantic shout out to Clarence and Alabama Worley from True Romance. Fucking amazing. Amazing? Fucking amazing Quentin Tarantino scripted film directed by the late Tony Scott. I mean, what can you say about this film? It is so good. So sweet. They are the perfect couple. Absolutely made for each other. A real romantic film. It is like the film title says. It's a true romance. So I had to put that in here at the top of the episode. Missed out on it last week. That was my ace in the hole, and I totally fucking skipped over it. Missed it completely. Too worried about bloody Lord of the Rings and shit, but anyway. To touch on romance a bit more, I will add as well. If I watched this before we did the romance episode, I would have brought this up as well, but I watched some more Black Mirror this week. I was making my way through season 3 still, and the very next episode that I had to watch was an episode called San Junipero, which stars Mackenzie Davis, who's actually one of my favorite actresses, like up-and-coming actresses in that. She had a bit part in The Martian. She was in this, in San Junipero. She was in Blade Runner 2049, which I rewatched. I might talk about that again in a minute. But you watch Black Mirror, and I've said this before, I like dark shows. I like bleak endings. I mean, I love this show. It's like, you know, the modern-day Twilight Zone. You know, all these episodes, a lot of these episodes actually have, like, real bleak endings, real downers. But I love them. I bloody love them. But this show, like, this episode... As bleak as the others are, this was just like the total opposite. This was the most pure, beautiful, romantic, amazing episode. I honestly think I was talking to a young girl at work this morning. She's actually a fan of Black Mirror and that as well. And I brought it up. I watched San Junipero. And she's like, I don't remember the name. What happened? And I explained the episode. And she's like, oh, fuck. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, honestly, I think that episode... was the single most beautiful piece of television I've ever seen. It was perfect. It was perfectly written, perfectly acted. It was just, it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I honestly think that's probably my favourite episode of Black Mirror so far that I've seen. It was so lovely and so refreshing, you know, all the bleakness and that. Like I say, I love the bleakness, but I mean... This was just like a breath of fresh air, you know, and it was just a nice little change in there. And then go back to the bleakness, which was fine. But yeah, I totally love the bloody ass off this episode. And if I had saw this before we did last week's episode, I definitely would have put that in there. San Junipero, season 3 of Black Mirror. Fucking amazing. If you haven't watched Black Mirror, give it a go, because it's really bloody good. It's a really bloody good show. All the episodes are just self-contained, little stories. And yeah, there's like... I wouldn't really say that there's a bad episode, but at the top of the scale, you have the exceptional, like, amazing episodes, and then at the bottom of the Black Mirror scale, you have the episodes which are good, but they just don't reach those lofty heights. Like, yeah, that was a fine watch, you know, like, it wasn't bad TV, but, you know, it wasn't like, I didn't think it was as exceptional as a lot of these other episodes, but yeah, I like every episode of Black Mirror I've watched, but yeah, this... San Junipero, that's up there. That's in my top 5. At the moment, that's probably my favourite episode of Black Mirror so far. But I've still got another episode to go to finish off Season 3. And then I'm going to move on to Season 4, which Pat keeps bugging me about. He really wants me to get onto this Star Trek USS Callister episode. So hopefully I should get to that in the next few days. When I get around to it, when I've got the bloody time, you know. between podcasting and work and thinking about this freelance festival and that, and preparing for this podcast workshop, which is, yeah, it's kind of daunting, but at the same time, it's really exciting at the same time. Like, yeah, as terrified as I am, I'm just as equally excited to do it. And, yeah, it should be a fun challenge and interesting. And if I get in there and there's like 100 people sitting there listening to me, I'm going to be like, fuck, Jesus. But it should be good. It should be fine. That's the end of April. Wrote off my bio and sent off my headshot the other day, so they're going to put it on the website under the Visionary Speakers page. So apparently now I'll be a visionary speaker. I don't know about that. There's authors and, you know, entrepreneurs and comedians and all these other people on there. And then there's me and Pat and Bob. We're visionaries in our own way, I'd like to think. Well, what else has happened to me? Let's see. Like I said, I rewatched Blade Runner 2049. The 4K disc was released in Australia last week. Picked it up straight away, had it pre-ordered, watched it last week, and I absolutely bloody loved it. I mean, honestly, on the second time around, I think I really liked it more on the second viewing than I did the first. I mean, in the cinema, you know, it was just the experience of the film, you know, you're just trying to take it all in and, you know, all these beautiful Roger Deakins cinematography and everything and, you know, taking in the story and the acting and just what's happening, reacting to it. And then to get home and sit down in your, you know, your own comfy couch and your big ass 4K HD TV and sit down and watch it in your own space again. And yeah, it was fantastic. Honestly, I enjoyed it more the second time around. If you haven't seen Blade Runner 2049, or Blade Runner for that matter, a lot of people I know hadn't seen Blade Runner before they watched 2049, you know, before 2049 was coming out, rather. So they had to go and watch Blade Runner before they watched that. So a lot of our younger viewers and stuff and younger listeners and other people I follow on Instagram and stuff, yeah, only just sort of experienced both of those films this year. Or last year. But it's a really interesting thing because I saw Blade Runner years and years ago. You know, I've seen quite a few of the cuts. I haven't seen all the cuts actually, but I've seen a few. I'm pretty happy with Ridley Scott's final cut. You know, it was his film, it was his vision, and that's his definitive cut. So that's the one I, you know, accept as gospel. So, you know, it's interesting for a younger person who'd never actually seen Blade Runner to watch that and then go on to the modern day sort of version sequel and just drawing the comparisons and the relation between the two and how they both fit together. And you know, it's kind of like the whole Mark Hamill thing, you know, because he was in Star Wars, he never got to experience Star Wars like everyone else in the world. It's kind of like I had this experience of Blade Runner watching it so many years ago and then 2049 coming out and, you know, watching them so many years apart. But for someone to come into it new and fresh and wanting to watch the first film before they watch the second, like so close together, you know, what kind of an interesting experience, you know, would that have been? Somebody comment below if you did that. If you hadn't seen Blade Runner and you watched it, and then not long after you watched 2049, just as it come out, you know, let us know. What was it like, you know, for you watching, you know, this is visionary sci-fi epic that pretty much every futuristic sci-fi film is like based around, you know, like taking the style from this film and just transposed it into everything else. I mean, just like Ghost in the Shell. I mean, 1996, Ghost in the Shell wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Blade Runner, you know? But yeah, let us know. Tell us what you thought about Blade Runner and 2049. Even if you didn't watch them together, you only watched those films recently, you know, or you haven't seen them at all, give them a watch. Tell us what you think. Let us know on the Bearded Geeks podcast. Comment below. I just want to bring this up too. I watch a bit of YouTube to burn a bit of time, or I'll put YouTube clips on in the background while I'm pottering around the house or doing dishes and stuff. I'll put a YouTube video on or something and just watch it, like analysis videos or anything like that. Top 10 lists, you know, they're always sort of film or video game related or something like that. So anyway, now they've got these fucking iPad Pro ads, like on the starts of these videos, you know, where is it you want to go? Fucking ad. I hate it. I hate the shit out of it. And the worst thing is you can't fucking skip the ads too. They go for like 12 seconds. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Saying like, I can't sit there for 12 seconds and have to like get through this clip. That's terrible, isn't it? That's a modern day thing. That's awful. I hate technology. I hate who I am. But no, this ad, like, I fucking hate it. I hate the stupid song they play over it. Where is it you want to go, or whatever. But the one thing I noticed when I first saw it, and you guys out there have got to notice it as well. If you're fans of this show and you're into what we're into, then you definitely have noticed this. The girl that's in the ads, you know, she's riding a bike and she pulls out her iPad, she takes a photo of something, she's dropping couches in there and drawing lightning bolts on cars. Is she dressed and modelled straight after Barb from Stranger Things? I mean, I can't have been the only one who made this comparison. Was that like a purposeful choice by the people behind that ad, by Apple? You're like, oh, Stranger Things is hot, so, you know, if we put this character in who was really popular, people will subconsciously like it more and buy Apple products. Fuck if I know. I'm not in advertising. I've watched Mad Men, but advertising is kind of appealing, actually, but no. I'm not in advertising. What do I know? Has anyone else made this comparison as well? Let me know in the comments below. Have you seen this ad? Alright, so we might move on to the news. Got a little bit here, pad out the episode, beef up the runtime a bit. So, first of all, this one's kind of exciting because, you know, we talked about these guys last week in Bromances and that. Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are developing a horror comedy series about a team of paranormal investigators called Truth Seekers. Now, it's going to be a half-hour series about a 3-person paranormal investigative team, and they investigate a paranormal incident in every episode. The only thing about it is, though, it doesn't really say sort of anywhere I found that Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are going to be actually on the show. They're going to be playing characters on the show. I would like to think that they would be 2 of the 3-person paranormal team, but that remains to be seen. I know they do have their own production company that they both started, you know, where they produce their own content and stuff. They were working on Slaughterhouse Rules. They're working on developing that film, but I don't know if they were going to star in it. Anyway, got a quote here from Simon Pegg about the show Truth Seekers. It'll start as a very parochial idea, a very small business venture for these people, but it will expand as the series goes on to be something far more global. It's a language everyone understands, the mystery of the unknown. Shaun of the Dead was a very parochial story set in North London, and somehow it managed to get this global reach because everyone understands the language of zombie movies. Which is totally true, like a little paranormal investigator team, Truth Seekers. It sounds like a pretty cool little show. Like if they bring some of that space comedy or some of that Shaun of the Deadness to it. I know Edgar Wright was involved in all of those projects, and he's just as much, you know, to blame for the quality of those shows as these guys, but, you know, hopefully, you know, they both did Paul, they both co-wrote Paul, which is a fine film. Like, I don't mind that film, that was a great watch. I haven't watched it again in years, though, actually. I should really get back onto that. I wouldn't mind watching that again. Anyway, this is a show I'll definitely be looking out for, so that's one to keep on your radar. Alright, next thing. Now, we talked about this the other week on our upcoming movies of 2018 that we're actually looking forward to. The new Cloverfield film. So, it was previously, it had the working title of God Particle, but it doesn't have a title as of yet. There's a rumour out there that the title has slipped out, and the movie will be called Cloverfield Station, which totally makes sense. You know, you've got a space station or whatever, what are you going to call it? Cloverfield Station. Okay, fine. Cloverfield Universe, that totally works 100%. Lending some credibility to that name, there's been a Facebook account, an Instagram account, and the domain names are cloverfieldstation.com and cloverfieldstationmovie.com been registered, so probably with 95% surety that it's going to be titled Cloverfield Station, which sounds pretty cool. I'm looking forward to this Cloverfield film. I like these anthology films. It's like a Black Mirror thing, you know, they're all self-contained, they're sort of wrapped around the same thumb, you know, this whole Cloverfield theme, you know, this universe, but they're their own independent stories. But a lot of them tie back into the same sort of themes, which is very cool. And also, there's another rumour from Sundance. Sundance is happening at the moment, the Sundance Film Festival, that there was a very interesting rumour that the film, Cloverfield Station, as it will probably be called, would be going to Netflix, which is actually really interesting because the movie is slated for theatres April 20th, 2018 in the US. So we know it's coming to theatres, but, you know, apparently there's some credibility to this rumour from the Sundance floor that this is going to happen. would this be the kind of thing where obviously they wouldn't release them concurrently because, you know, you can pay $13 at home to watch Cloverfield Station, or you can go out and pay $20 at the cinema and watch the movie? Or is it going to be the kind of thing where once the film is done in cinemas, boom, it's going to go straight to Netflix right after? There's a good chance for that, you know, but then you always have the thing about, you know, pirating. People can, like, pilfer stuff off Netflix and put it out there in the world for people to download and stuff, which cuts back on home release sales and, you know, sort of video on demand and those kinds of services, unless they're going to release them pretty much straight away as well. I mean, who knows? That's another interesting rumour. Whether that's true or not, I don't know sort of how that would work in the filmscape, but, you know, maybe Netflix aren't really scared of lashing out money and trying new things, so maybe they're going to try something groundbreaking. Another topic out there on the news front. Found out yesterday that we're actually getting another Robocop film. So we're getting a Robocop film that's in development, but the thing about this Robocop film is it is going to be a direct sequel to the original 1987 Paul Verhoeven film, which is too fucking pentous, really. The script is being written by Ed Neumeyer. He wrote the original screenplay for Robocop, and he's also he did the Starship Troopers adaptation. He's actually been involved in all the Starship Troopers films, so the second, the third, which he also directed, and the 2 CG films. I think one was in Invasion, and the one that came out last year, I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, so Ed Neumeyer went on to say, talking about the film, "We're not supposed to say too much. There's been a bunch of other Robocop movies, and there was recently a remake. And I would say this would be kind of going back to the old Robocop we all love, and starting there and going forward. So it's a continuation, really, of the first movie, in my mind. So it's a little bit more of the old school thing, which is great. Heavy satire in the first Robocop film, and also in Starship Troopers, and especially in Starship Troopers 3 as well, Marauder, which Ed Neumeyer directed, which actually isn't a bad movie. I think the worst thing about that movie is the budget limitations. I mean, because it's apparently obvious that they had a very small budget for that. It's actually not a bad movie. If you can pick it up cheap, or catch it on Netflix or one of these streaming services or whatever, it's not a bad watch. Like, it pales in comparison to the first film, but in its own right, it's not a bad watch. It's just a little bit cheaper on the budget side, which is unfortunate. But they're all written by the same guy, so they've still got that punch. Talking about Robocop, this is one film that I actually really love. I'm a big fan of the original 1987 Paul Verhoeven film. They don't fucking make movies like that anymore, can I tell you? R-rated. I mean, the scene where Alex Murphy is murdered is fucking brutal. Like, when you catch, like, here in Australia, if you catch Robocop on TV, like on free-to-air TV, like a late-night screening, that shit is edited to fuck for free-to-air TV. I mean, it is edited down to bare bones. I think you probably get the shots. You probably get the first shot of Alex Murphy being shot, and he flies back, and you don't get the hand being shot scene, then boom, blowing up his hand exploding, like right in your face. You don't get that. You get all the shots of like everyone standing back and just boom, 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 you know, blowing holes in him and stuff. But you don't get like all the, you know, the shots of Alex Murphy being shot and blood going everywhere and guts exploding and everything in that. They don't make movies like that anymore, unfortunately. But going on from that movie that I love to talk about I think it was the 2014 it was released. 2014 Robocop film starring Joel Kinnaman and Michael Keaton, and directed by, I think it's Jose Padilla? If I'm getting that wrong, I'm sorry. I actually quite enjoyed that movie. Samuel L. Jackson's in it as well. I quite like that film. It is very different from the original film. It has its own breed of satire and stuff in that in it, so modern day satire. Samuel L. Jackson is great in those scenes, by the way. But a lot of people give it a hard time. Like, you know, I was a bit iffy about, you know, the sort of the tactical black, like, SWAT Robocop suit, which he wears for like 2/3 of the movie. But, you know, he does wear his sort of original inspired Robocop suit, you know, armor and whatever, Robocop outfit. And then, again, at the end of the film, he gets an even, like, better one that looks just like it. But, you know, I didn't hate that movie. I actually quite liked it. It'll never compare to the original, but in its own right, as on its own film. I quite like that movie, and it's not a bad movie. Like, go back and watch it now. It's actually quite good. The scene where Alex Murphy gets murdered, though, like the car bomb and that, the way he flies back, that's a bit iffy CG, but, you know, oh well. We can't complain too much. But yeah, it's not a terribly bad movie. It's actually quite watchable and quite enjoyable. Yeah, it's quite good. So anyway, more Robocop. So this film will continue on from the first film. I'm not sure whether it will ignore 2 and 3, or it'll just slot in there in the middle. But I imagine, like a lot of these films are doing, they're just discounting the sequels and just going back to the original, which is always the best. And like, we're just going to act like those never happened. And we'll just continue on from the one that you all like and go from there. So that's great. More Robocop. If they could get, like, Paul Verhoeven to direct, how fucking good would that be? No one would let him do it, though. No one would give him the money. I mean, if he wanted to do it, like, a lower budget, you know, that'd be fine if he could get away with it. Depends what would be in that script, though. If you could, like, balance that budget in that script and, like, keep the cost down when you're writing it, yeah, I could see them giving the reins to Verhoeven. Whether he'd want to do it or not is another story, because he's already sort of been there and done that. But then, who do you get to play Alex Murphy? I mean, Peter Weller's out there. I mean, the last sort of mainstream role he had was, he was in Star Trek Into Darkness. And, you know, the guy's not young anymore, he couldn't do it. Well, maybe he could. If they put him in the suit and left the helmet on, or they could just de-age his mouth and everything, he could still do it. Fuck yeah, he could still do it. Get Peter Weller back. Let him fucking do it. Let him climb back in the suit. That would be excellent. I would watch that movie. Now, this one totally took me by surprise last weekend. I did not see this coming in a million years. But after I saw it, I'm like, I didn't know I needed it until I'd seen it. The movie is Dundee, the son of a legend returns home, starring Danny McBride as Brian Dundee, Mick Dundee's son. It's a sequel to the Crocodile Dundee films, Crocodile Dundee, Crocodile Dundee 2, and Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, if they're counting that movie. I imagine they are. Anyway, so this came out of nowhere the other day. This is the one thing that, like, nobody saw coming. They had this little teaser trailer, Danny McBride dressed up in full Crocodile Dundee getup, the vest, the hat, the knife, he had the lot. The whole kit and caboodle he had. And I saw this and I'm like, I need this. I never knew I needed this until I saw it. I mean, I posted this on, like, Facebook and stuff. I think I posted it on Instagram, and I'm like, I pretty much said the same thing. I never knew I needed this until I saw it. And everybody, like, because I'm from Australia, obviously, and everyone's on there, this is crap, I'd rather watch Paul Hogan read the phone book, obviously this is a joke, this is sacrilege, no one would want to watch this, blah, 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 fuck this. And I'm like, so fucking what? I mean, the last Crocodile Dundee movie they made was in 2001. Everyone fucking hated it. It was called, like, one of the worst movies made that year, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was nominated for Razzies as well. So the Crocodile Dundee franchise that you really care about has been sitting on ice for the last 17 years. And I mean, fucking give these guys props for just taking the concept and just running with it. You know, do something completely different. I mean, this is Australian legacy. I mean, this Crocodile Dundee stuff. Yeah, sure, it was a little bit, you look back on it now, it was maybe a little bit racist, it was a little bit homophobic and whatever and that, but, you know, it's one thing that we had that, you know, we put out into the world and everyone liked, and it put Australia on the map, you know? And then Paul Hogan with all the bloody ads, throw another shrimp on the barbie. We don't actually call them shrimp here in Australia, just letting you know, we call them prawns. They are prawns. But yeah, they're prawns, not shrimp. Nobody calls them fucking shrimp around here. That's an American thing. We just did that so you guys knew what they were. Throw another prawn on the barbie! What the fuck is he talking about? Anyway. So this seems really cool. Dundee, the son of a legend, returns home. This wasn't on my radar at all, but now it fucking is, and I'm keen. Like, even if it's going to be shit, like, I don't care. I just want to go and see it. It'll be fun. I hope it's fun. Anyway. Or it's just going to be a massive cop-out like a Super Bowl ad, like some people are speculating. If that's the case, there's egg on all our bloody faces. And me especially, because I just talked about it for the last 5 fucking minutes. But, oh well, I guess we'll just wait and see, I guess. So anyway, moving on now. That's the end of the news. And we're going to move on to our first topic. The Oscar nominations came out today for the 90th? Is it the 90th Academy Awards we're going into this year? Fucking hell, 90 years. Jesus. Anyway, so the Oscar nominations came in today, and obviously we've got the regular sort of, I'm calling it Oscar wank. I'm not saying that these are bad films, but these are obviously just like, they're always the samey kind of films that are in. They've always got like Tom Hanks in it, or fucking Meryl Streep, and all these Frances McDormand, all these movies. I'm not saying they're bad films, and I'm not saying they're bad actors and actresses, but, it's always the samey type stuff, that comes in. We got movies like The Post, okay, fair enough. I've heard that's quite good, but, obviously it's just another Oscar-y type film. Meryl Streep's got another bloody award nomination. That'll just add that to the list. We got 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which probably isn't a bad film. I've heard some pros and cons about the actual film, but it's one of those movies because it stars Frances McDormand. It's sort of been put into that sort of leading up to the Oscar season, sort of the November, December, January area, where it can get the most attention before the Oscars. And so we've also got Phantom Thread, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, which is his last film, apparently, before he retires permanently from acting and goes back to making shoes or whatever it is he does in his spare time when he's not winning Oscars. Obviously, another bit of Oscar baity film. Paul Thomas Anderson. Obviously, my favourite Paul Thomas Anderson movie is There Will Be Blood, which is a fucking incredible film. And deservedly, he won the best Oscar for that film. We've also got Darkest Hour, with Gary Oldman playing Winston Churchill, which he'll probably get his best Oscar, finally, Best Actor Oscar. I'm not sure how many times Oldman's been nominated before, but, he's one of those guys who's probably deserving for the body of work he's had, but he's just never won anything for a specific film. It's like that at the Academy Awards. Most people never win the Oscar for the movie they should have got it for. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, for example. He won last year for The Revenant. That was the Oscar he should have won for The Wolf of Wall Street, because The Wolf of Wall Street was a much better performance in The Revenant. He just did a lot of acting with his face. Alright, we're going to tell everyone that we're filming out in real cold conditions, natural lighting, none of this stuff. You're going to eat a real horse liver or whatever. Just act with your face. And he won the Oscar. Props to him for doing like an endurance thing for like 3 or 4 months or however long filming was and winning the Oscar. But he is a deserving actor, but he definitely should have won for Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not saying that The Revenant is the worst performance, because it was actually quite good. It was quite a powerful film, but yeah, he definitely should have won for Wolf of Wall Street. But that's like it in the whole Oscar thing. All these actors and actresses, they have these amazing careers of all these films, but, they're nominated, but they never actually win. So they always sort of just... There's that one movie that comes out and they're like, okay, there's some good performances that year, but this one wasn't particularly good, but, they've been deserving for a long time, so we'll just give it to them. It always sort of ends up being that at the Oscars. The movie or the actor or the actress or the best original screenplay or best song or best animated film, it never actually wins. Like the film that is the most deserving never actually wins. It always goes to something else. So, one thing that actually is really interesting, though, about the Oscars this year is the Disaster Artist has been totally snubbed in every category bar one, which is Best Adapted Screenplay, which is the one category that James Franco had nothing to do with. Obviously, because of all the sexual misconduct allegations he's been getting, since his Golden Globes win, where he won Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical, playing Tommy Wiseau in The Disaster Artist. So he's been completely snubbed. Like, leading up to the Oscars this year, you're definitely going to see Franco in there. Best Actor, probably The Disaster Artist will be nominated for, Best Film, Best Director, and all that sort of stuff. Completely snubbed because of these allegations and that. Whether they're true or not, it's actually really disappointing to hear, because James Franco actually, this is just one of those really disappointing things where something that happens outside of the actual film world, in their personal life, always affects the work. I always find that disappointing. I'm not trying to downplay it or anything about what, these women are accusing him for, because it's terrible. I don't condone anything like all these allegations coming out, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, all these producers, all these people are coming out with all these stories and these allegations out. Like, I don't condone any of this, But I just feel like it's really disappointing when all this sort of stuff gets tied up with the work. Like, it's a shame that we can't separate those things, but that's just the way the world works, unfortunately. But yeah, so the Disaster Artist has been totally snubbed at the Oscars this year, bar one category, Best Adapted Screenplay. Dunkirk came in with 8 nominations. Obviously, Best Director, Best Picture. I think there's cinematography in there, probably Best Editing as well. Christopher Nolan's a great filmmaker. I don't think Dunkirk is his best work. I watched it and I thought it was a good film. I did enjoy it, but I don't think it was his best. I know a lot of people out there, like in my Instagram feed and stuff, they love Dunkirk. Some of them, made their top 10 for the year. It was up there. A lot of people in their top 5s for the year. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm really glad that you love that movie, but it just didn't do that for me. Chris Nolan's best film is The Prestige, in my opinion. Followed very closely by Memento. But yeah, not Dunkirk. Like, it was a great film, but is it really deserving of a best director, best film, whatever? If it was a different year and they're all shit films, then yeah, probably. But not this year. I don't think so. Keeping going with some of the more interesting nominations of the year. Last year was a fucking amazing year for genre pictures. I mean, it really was. Going to the cinema in that last year, there were so many fantastic genre pictures and great, like, big budget films and that out there that really sort of excelled, not just, like, as popcorn, blockbuster, escapism fare, but, they were really quite deep. And one film I'm actually talking about in particular is Logan. Logan picked up 1 nomination, and that was for Best Adapted Screenplay. I believe James Mangold is in there as well. He has a writing credit on that adapted screenplay. I don't know if he has it with someone else. I think he's solo on that. But if he wins for that, that'll be his one Oscar. That'll solely be his. So that's exciting. I thought Logan might have got a Best Picture nomination, but didn't, unfortunately. But oh well. Moving on to probably the biggest film of the Oscar season this year that's pulled in the most nominations is The Shape of Water, with 13 nominations. 13 fucking nominations! I'm really happy about this. First of all, before I go into that, I'm actually really disappointed because I haven't seen The Shape of Water. I've been talking up the last couple of weeks. It came out in Australia last week, but for some reason, our local cinema chains probably decided that it probably just wouldn't play well in our areas. We just wouldn't get it in our rural areas or our smaller towns or whatever. So, unfortunately, we didn't get it. There was one cinema playing it here in my state. They're 2.5 hours away. Contemplating going down to see it, but honestly, I don't think I'll make it. It's only playing there for another week. So, I think I'm just going to have to wait until the home release. I'll wait till the 4K. And later in the year, we'll do a review on it. But yeah, I just wanted to say I was really disappointed I didn't see it at the cinema. That was one movie that I really wanted to see. But unfortunately, them's the breaks. But the exciting thing is, Shape of Water, 13 nominations. We're talking Best Picture. We're talking Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Cinematography, Film Editing, Sound Mixing, Production Design, Original Score, and Costume Design. I've said this before, Guillermo del Toro is one of my top 3 favourite film directors of all time, up there with John Carpenter and David Fincher. I love this guy's entire film catalogue. I love everything he does. The guy is incredibly sincere, and he's a really interesting guy. He's a really sweet guy. I watched there are some videos on YouTube of tours of his house. It's just like a monster museum. You go through there. It's incredibly inspiring to hear him talk about, his love of monsters and everything in that. And him being one of my favourite film directors ever, I'm so excited that he's finally getting his due. I mean, he's finally being noticed for the creative and amazing talent that he actually is. He won Best Director at the Golden Globes for The Shape of Water. Guillermo says this is his favourite film he's ever done. It's his most personal film. It's the one film that he loves the most out of everything he's done in his, 25 years he's been working in film. And I really want to see him win for this. Best Director, Best Picture. I really hope he does. Sally Hawkins is nominated for Best Actress. Richard Jenkins is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Octavia Spencer for Best Supporting Actress. I can see Shape of Water picking up quite a few of these Oscars, actually. I mean, I really hope so. I really just want to see, out of the whole night, I just want to see Guillermo win the Best Director and, Best Picture. I really hope I see that. No, I mean, I really want to see Sally Hawkins winning that as well. We'll just wait and see. Hopefully. Our fingers are crossed. And that was fantastic. Hearing this film had secured that many nominations, for that guy, for that cast, for the team behind that film. But the one film that was the most surprising and probably one of the most exciting, securing 4 Oscar nominations, Jordan Peele's Get Out. Holy fuck. Probably one of the most interesting genre films of last year. It was actually the most the most financially successful film of last year, because what did it make? It was a film that was made on a $4.5 million budget, produced by Blumhouse. They're a smaller independent studio. They produce low budget horror films, and it went on to make, I think, up to $300 million worldwide. So the profit margin on this movie was astronomical compared to its minuscule budget. Get Out's been nominated for 4 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Actor for Daniel Kaluuya. Holy fuck. He's up there with Daniel Day-Lewis, Gary Oldman. I can't even remember who else was fucking nominated for that as well, but holy shit. I mean, this young kid, he was in like one of the better episodes of Black Mirror and that as well. I mean, totally fucking props to the genre film that could, it came out of nowhere. It started to pick up this little buzz as it was coming, and it just took the world by storm. Jordan Peele's up there, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay. He's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards, 3rd as well in there for Best Picture. This is astounding. I mean, it really is. I mean, this sets a precedent sort of for the future in that. I mean, the Oscars, they're that hoity-toity, fancy-pantsy show, that sort of always turns its back on horror. Horror has no place at the Academy Awards. But this year's different. Get Out was something really special. It was one of those really unique horror films that sort of transcended the genre. And obviously it shows now. All the nominations have picked up, the financial success, the critical success, and now 4 Academy Award nominations. Fucking good on it. I can't wait to see this show and see what happens. Maybe they might not win for any of these, but who knows? Who knows? They could be at the back of the pack and just run forward and take it. It's really exciting though. The Oscars should be pretty good this year. Hopefully it doesn't run too long. It always runs way too long. And there's too much emphasis on comedy and stuff, and that just get on with the show. Just get on with the awards. Let people make their speeches. Cut an hour out of the show. It goes too bloody long. Make it like 2.5 hours or whatever. It'll never happen, but, we can always hope. And now on to our second topic of the episode. We don't really talk a lot of comic books on the show. We always say it at the top of the episode, we cover movies, video games, comics, and TV. We talk a lot about movies and video games and TV, but we've never really had much of a chance to talk too much about comic books. Not in depth, anyway, really. We've had the Spider-Man episode. I talked a bit about Batman and Batman White Knight and stuff, but I've never really dedicated like a nice little chunk out of an episode to talk about some comic books. So I'm going to do that today. I'm going to talk to you about a very amazing little comic book series, a little 5-issue comic book series from Image Comics called Shirtless Bear-Fighter! Now, I've read a lot of comics over the years, I've mainly swam in the superhero pool, with Marvel. When I was a kid, I was everything Spider-Man. I collected every Spider-Man book I could get my hands on. My brother was an X-Men kid. He pretty much collected every X-Men book he could get his hands on. And as I got older, obviously you heard me talk about this before, I moved over to DC somewhat. I got into Batman. As I got older, I got into darker stories and darker storytelling and more realistic storytelling. And DC do a lot of that, over there. They're not scared to push it that little bit further in their books and add that extra layer of realism in there. But one studio that I actually really love is Image Comics. Now, in the last 5 to 10 years, Image Comics have really sort of come into their own with creator-owned titles. So, nothing that's really created and published by them in-house. They get writers and that in, they pitch stories and that to them, and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll back you for this, and we'll publish this comic you want to do. And these artists and writers, creators and that, they create these little, runs or, bigger, longer runs, stuff like The Walking Dead. But then you get something like this come along. There's this little 5-issue miniseries, Shirtless Bear-Fighter, something incredibly unique. I mean, there have been other books out there that are similar to this. Books like, let's see, a bigger book, Invincible as well. Pat's a big fan of Invincible. It's just actually finished its run. It just had its final issue out a week or two ago, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Chew, which is an amazing concept for a comic book. Sex Criminals, Bitch Planet, and actually another book that I've got coming in the mail, which I heard about through Image. It just came out in trade paperback, I think, a month or two ago. It's called God Country. That is one book I'm excited to read, and I'll talk about that in another episode later in the year. I want to try and bring a few more comics and that into the show, even if I can just recommend some books and that for you guys. You can go and check out, or just go down to your local comic book shop and just pick up an issue and see if you actually like it yourself, and then maybe you want to jump in and, grab the whole run and try it. You never know. So anyway, Shirtless Bear-Fighter is written by, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name, Jody Lehup? I think that's right. Lehup. And Sebastian Gerner. These two guys co-wrote this book with art by Neil Vendrell and colours by Mark Spicer. Now, like I said, it is a 5-issue limited series. And if you're curious to know what the story is, have a listen to this. After being betrayed by the bears that raised him, the legendary Shirtless Bear-Fighter wanders the forest he's sworn to protect, fist-fighting bears, eating flapjacks, and being the angriest man the world has ever known. When wild-eyed, super-strong bears attack the citizens of Major City, Shirtless ventures into the human world to do what he does best, punch those bears in the face. But all is not as it seems. Someone is manipulating Shirtless, and only by confronting the demons of his past can Shirtless hope to save the future. Shirtless Bear-Fighter is honestly the most fun I've ever had reading a comic book in my entire life. I've read a lot of comics over the years since I was a kid. Like I said, Superhero Fair. This was the very first book I ever read where I actually burst out laughing as I was reading it, as I was turning the pages. The premise is incredibly simple. The story is about this guy. His name actually is Shirtless Bear-Fighter. In the story, when people refer to him, they just call him Shirtless. Shirtless! Now, the story goes, there's a group of civilized bears that live in this forest, and one day they hear this noise in the bush, and they go over and they find this baby, a shirtless bear-fighting baby, which, as the art shows on the page, there's this baby laying there in the grass with a full beard, a full black beard. And another one of the running gags in the book is actually Shirtless likes to get around naked, and he has, pretty big implement between his legs, which is digitally blurred out in every scene. It's actually a pretty funny running gag. But, to cap off this running gag, when they find this baby, he has, a pretty big implement between his legs, even as a baby, which is digitally blurred out. So that's another one of those great visual gags and that in the story. But anyway, Mum and Pup Bear, they raise Shirtless, as he grows up, he's stronger than the average human, he's strong enough to actually fight bears and take them on. So Mum and Pup Bear, they raise him, and as he gets older, his father, Pup Bear, takes him up to this cliff one day and pretty much says to him to look out onto the forest, and you're like, this is our home. And he's like, it's now your task to protect this forest from all evil and anyone who would come to do the forest or anyone who lives there harm. And he makes Shirtless swear an oath that he'll always protect the forest. And he does. And the story picks up at the beginning that these bears, it's kind of like a mini Godzilla invasion. These bears have invaded this city, and we've got these FBI agents and stuff. They fly out to the forest in their helicopters and stuff, and they go to Shirtless's home, which is the bear house, he refers it to. It's a log cabin that's covered in bear pelts and stuff. And they need to recruit Shirtless. It's like an 80s action movie. the military or the government's there and they've exhausted all their options. They've used the army, they've used the National Guard, and they have nothing left. This is their last-ditch effort, to save them. So they go out into the forest and they find Shirtless, and, they have previous history with Shirtless, and they're like, we need you to come and stop these bears. They've made their way into the cities. We'll pay you anything you want. And he's like, money doesn't interest me. So they bring in 2 tons of a lifetime supply of flapjacks and maple syrup. And he takes it on for that because, that's his currency. He lives for flapjacks and maple syrup, but just don't call them pancakes. You call them pancakes, he'll get very angry. So the story is pretty much Shirtless goes into the city to take on these bears, and along the way, he gets embroiled in this conspiracy involving a toilet paper company, of all things, with their brand of toilet paper called Fuzzy Wipes. And there's this big conspiracy that delves into Shirtless's past, and we get more of that in the book. This book is incredibly fun. It's actually a really good read. The artwork is fantastic. It's very simple, but it's not too simple. It's kind of borderlines between cartoonish and realistic. It kind of walks that fine line. It's not too cartoonish, but it's not too realistic. It sort of fits the over-the-top vibe of the book, the total absurd vibe of the book. The dialogue in it is fantastic. This is a really well-written book. I mean, when you've got dialogue like, let him have it, boys, that bear is rubbing his ass on America. And, there's another line of dialogue in there which actually made me burst out laughing. Shirtless is, trying to be recruited by the FBI, and they're talking about, if you can't do it, if you don't come, the president's prepared to use, ultimate measures that'll cause human casualties, like nukes. They're prepared to nuke these bears. And then this guy turns around and says to Shirtless, he's like, all options are on the table, but you know as well as I do, the president won't negotiate with bearists. So there are bear puns aplenty in this book. Absolute aplenty. I don't really want to tell you guys anymore because this is one book that, I really would like you to just go out and buy it and read it. The way I fell into this book was I just happened to stumble across the cover. I think one of the local comic book shops, I think in Melbourne, posted their list, the list of comics they'd just gotten in, and I was going through it, and I saw this list of Shirtless Bear-Fighter or something like that. Or I just happened to come across the cover online, and I saw the title, Shirtless Bear-Fighter, and it just sounded absolutely ridiculous, but it sounded really cool. And then I stumbled across it again, probably just a month ago, and I ordered the trade paperback, and it turned up probably 2 weeks ago, and I read it, and honestly, man, this is the most fun I've ever had reading a comic book. I can't say that enough. I really can't. One thing that would actually be epic about this comic is if it was, turned into an animated series, kind of like an Axe Cop kind of thing. Maybe a Comedy Central or someone like that took it on and they didn't sort of water down the adult humor, the adult side of it, some of the violence, and the pixelated dicks, we'll just say. The violence in the book is actually, it's not too over the top. Shirtless will get bitten by a bear or he'll get slashed by bear claws and there'll be blood and stuff, but it's not too gory. It walks that line sort of between, too much and not enough. So it just walks that line perfectly. You get blood, but, it's not gory. There's no one getting blown up and arms and legs and bits being blown everywhere. And I mean, going back to the artwork and the dialogue, honestly, I think in this book, this is probably the best book I've ever read where the artwork and the dialogue really sort of pairs together very well. You can be reading a line of dialogue, some speech bubbles of dialogue, and then go down to the next panel, and from that conversation, it's carried over into the artwork of the next panel. So the next panel just explains it without having to try to do the comic book thing of over-explaining it or whatever or anything like that. It's a really good marriage of the two. Or even there's a scene where a pest guy in the first page or whatever, he gets a radio call about, the bear in the city or whatever. And he's like, I'm going to go handle it. And he goes around the corner and there's this bear, which is it's this great splash page of him standing there. He's probably a quarter the size of the bear, and he has this little tin of like bear repellent spray, and he's spraying it, and just like the dialogue of the spray is just like really tiny, and it just really gets across the fact that this tiny little tin is completely insignificant to this bear, and it's not going to do anything. Like, it really carries that comedy over well. So there's that really great marriage of artwork to dialogue. It's starting in the artwork and picking up again in the dialogue, or vice versa, in the dialogue and then the artwork picking it up, so you can just so you can follow on from the conversation and know exactly where it's gone and get that cue, piece those two pieces of dialogue together in their own way, written and visual. So that's a great pairing. It actually, like I said, it is probably the best pairing of that form of storytelling that I've ever seen in a comic book. It's a really easy read. It's a pretty quick read to get through it. Like I said, it's only 5 issues in the trade paperback, but like once I finished it, I wanted more. This wasn't enough to satisfy me. This was great. I think I got through it probably in, I don't know, probably a bit over an hour. I think I didn't motor through it, but I just sat there and just enjoyed it and took in the artwork. But yeah, it can be a pretty quick read if you want it to. The first read through though is fantastic. On further read throughs and that, if you picked it up in 6 or 12 months and read it again and forgot some of it, you would still have a great time. You would laugh at some of the dialogue that you've forgotten, and you would laugh at some of these visual cues. The Fuzzy Wipes logo is actually a giant toilet roll with this little cartoon bear rubbing his ass up against it and scratching it with a big grin on his face. It's just those great little visual gags in this book. I really loved it. One other thing with the dialogue is when it's just really funny, you read so many comic books, they'll punch someone or they'll kick someone, it'll be boom, bang, the text on the page, getting across the sound effect of a punch or an explosion or whatever, a punch, bang. But every time Shirtless punches someone, it always just says in big block text, bear punch, ! Or he kicks a bear, it's like bear kick, and all these great things. I absolutely loved it. It's so well put together. You can really tell that the team, the 3 guys involved in the creation of this book, they really love this concept and they just absolutely ran with it. It is totally absurd. Some of it is nonsensical, but that adds to the charm of the book. This book knows exactly what it is and doesn't care, just runs with it. It's totally absurd. It's totally fun. Other things you've got in the book, you've also got this southern pigman. He's like a mage, a wizard, and he's called the Hillbilly Warlock, which is pretty cool. There's magic bacon, there's the conspiracy involving toilet paper, and there's all the bear and poop puns that you could think of, wrapped into this great read. This is one thing that I loved about creator-owned comics, and that, all the love and care and attention that actually go into it. It's not like a studio hiring a writer, like a Marvel hiring a writer, we want to hire you to write Spider-Man for us, Okay, you come in and put your own spin on it, but that character belongs to someone else. Whereas at Image, you can have these people, these creator-owned stories, they can have these stories, they can go to Image and they can pitch it to them. They're like, okay, we're going to fund that and we're going to publish that for you. And then these people, they just do their own thing. That's one thing I love about Bob's book, Brown Fury. That is a total creator-owned book. You can tell all the love and care and attention that's gone into that book. Fucking props to you, Bob. I love that book. I'm still waiting for you to sign my copy, actually. I've got it sitting there. You haven't signed it yet. But yeah, you can tell that the writers and the artists and everyone involved in the creation of these creator-owned books, they love this material that they're putting out, and it really comes across in the writing and in the artwork, and they're always just really well paced. They're really well put together. You can tell that these people have spent a lot of time putting these together and refining it and taking out the fluff and the filler and everything and just making it this nice, tight little package that just makes for an excellent read and a great bloody visual feast for the eyes. So, all in all, if I were to give this a rating, I would absolutely give it 5 bear punches out of 5. for the third or fourth time, I'll say it again. This is the most fun I've ever had reading a comic book. It was smart, it was fun, it was ridiculous and silly, and it was really such a breath of fresh air to read. But again, it was fun. It's so much fun to read. I mean, this is the most fun I've ever had reading a comic book, and I'll just keep saying it. This is the most fun I've ever had reading a comic. And it makes a really great escape of a book. If you're having a shit day and you just want to come home and unwind and read something funny that will make you burst out loud laughing, go and pick up Shirtless Bear-Fighter. If you've never read a comic, but you've always been interested in comics and you want to try getting into it, but you don't really know where to start because there's so much out there, give Image a try. Check out Image Comics. They've got so many great books out there. Not just ongoing series, but shorter, like tighter miniseries and stuff. You know, Shirtless Bear-Fighter is only a 5-issue series for now. But I want a sequel. I want more. I definitely want more. There are other books out there. They're incredibly interesting, incredibly well done. Like I said, I've just got God Country. I've got that coming. Just a quick rundown of that book. It's about a father. He has some mental illness problems. I believe it's like some form of dementia or something like that. He really acts out, and it's hard on his family, you know, with his mental illness. But then like a hurricane sweeps through his town in Texas or whatever, and then after it swept through, he finds a sword in the ground that was in the eye of the hurricane, and when he grabs it, like his equilibrium comes back. He returns to being a normal person. Like when he holds his sword, like all those mental problems and that he had, they all just wash away, and he's just like a regular guy, and he can think straight and talk straight, and you know, all this sort of stuff. But then there's monsters and shit that involved that he has to fight and kill as well. So as for the bare bones, that's all I really know, but I'm really excited to get my hands on this book. I think that's probably only like 6 or 7 issues in that trade as well. So that's a really interesting read that I'm looking to reading. So, yeah, if you've never read a comic before and you want to try something, I would recommend Shirtless Bear-Fighter. You like a good comedy, you like great like 80s movie tropes and stuff, and just a really funny, silly book, then go out and buy Shirtless Bear-Fighter, because I can guarantee, if you like to have fun, you'll love this book. It's absurd, it's absolutely silly, and it knows it, and it just takes the ball and runs with it. Read it, Shirtless Bear-Fighter. 5 bear punches out of 5 from Jages. So that might do us for today. I'll wrap it up now. If you want to find us online, the Bearded Geeks, you can jump on Facebook, facebook.com/Bearded Geeks Pod. If you want to listen to the show, we're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Twitter. If you want to buy a t-shirt, we're on TeePublic. We're also on Twitter, and we're on Instagram as well. Thanks everyone for listening in this week. Listen to me talk about the Oscars and running through the news, and letting me have the chance to talk about Shirtless Bear-Fighter. Great read, great book. Thanks everyone. I look forward to talking more comics in the future. I'll try to make it more of a habit, try to filter in some more comics into this show. If you got any comics out there that you've actually read, anything actually particularly from Image, like if you got any miniseries out there or something that's actually particularly great that you've read, let me know. Comment below, message me on Facebook, private message me or whatever on the Instagram page, tweet it to me, whatever, let me know. Thanks everyone for listening. Please remember to like the videos, like the episodes, and give us a share if you can. Every little bit helps. Thanks everyone. We'll see you all next week on the Bearded Geeks. We'll punch some more bears together. Hey!